at this point, consumption was up, output is high, everybody's employed. But now, if government spending drops, we're going to go back into the Great Depression. That did not happen. There was a recession in 1948, and it was a sharp recession. At that point, US government spending had dropped about 60 to 70%. We were spending about a third of what we were in 1944-45. But the 1948 recession was a deep recession, but it didn't last 10 years. It lasted 3 quarters. And then the economy was growing again. And that kind of continued throughout the 1950s. We had, I think, 2 more recessions in the 1950s, but they were both short ones, and then the economy resumed growth. And by and large, those were prosperous years. So, Keynes at this point has been vindicated. When the US government did what Keynes had told them to do, just spend a lot of money, even if it's a waste, and what is all this? My tank destroys your tank destroys my tank. My soldier digs a hole, your soldier fills the hole in it. Kind of the same thing. You know, if you think that a tank is about as useful as a hole, which I do. Outside the war, tanks are very expensive luxuries, unless they deter a war. So Keynes had sort of been vindicated in all of this. And Keynesian economics swept the field of economics, and everyone now thinks, okay, go Keynes. And it might have been there, except there was now a technological change. Something technological happened. What was invented in the late 1950s that really started to have an impact in the 1960s? No? Not the internet. But you're on the right track. The computer. That's very nice. You still need to get a job. Can't use that forever. The computer. The computer was invented in 1957. The first modern computer was invented in 1957. And the computer allows us to do what? That we couldn't do before. That's a loaded question. There's a lot of things it allows us to do. Do you all know how to use a spreadsheet? Yeah, of course, everyone knows how. I didn't know how to use a spreadsheet when I was growing up. I didn't know how to do that. That was a very specialized skill, actually doing that, because it was really hard to do. Keeping ledger books, double entry accounting, stuff like that. What was very hard for economists to do, and which I have not been doing this class, is put numbers behind any of this. You'll notice I'm not putting numbers for any of this. In real economics, we very often do. We actually estimate what is the slope of this. But to do that, what do you have to do? Nothing too hard. You just have to know what the price of everything is and know everything that got produced in the economy. Yeah, that's going to take a lot of computing power. And then you have to compare them and see what a change does. And when you want to see when something is changing, you have to use statistics. Do you take a class in statistics?
No.
No. Yes. Did you take a class in statistics? Did you get matrix algebra? Did you like it? So when you got the matrix algebra, you did, I'm assuming, maybe a 3x1 matrix and multiply them out? That's what I did. I did a 3x1 matrix and multiplied it out. How do do a 3 by 100 matrix and multiply that by a 2 by 2 matrix by hand. Can you imagine doing that? A matrix is a bunch of variables like so, and then you have another matrix, and then this by this times this times this times this times, and that all equals another matrix that can be like 100 by 30 or something like that.
I remember that it was fun when I studied that. If I know how to do it, like at that time.
Yeah, no, I learned it, but I never learned beyond the 3 by 2 or the 3 by 3. I didn't actually remember, it was so long ago.
Yeah.
This is before most of you were born, and I had to learn how to do it. But I've sort of forgotten it because I don't do it anymore. I let the computer do it. Historically, the way you did it, you had 3 people in a room. One person had a giant piece of paper with all the numbers on it. Another person had the second piece of paper, all the numbers. And a third person's job was he would call out a number, he would call out a number, this person would multiply them in his head and write the number down. And then they'd do it again. And if somebody sneezed, oh my God, did we lose our place? Do we have to start over? It was a phenomenally time-consuming and difficult thing to do before we had. This is the kind of thing computers are really good at. Computers are really good at this kind of thing. Although, no, a lot depends on the numbers you put in. You all know garbage in, garbage out? Garbage in, garbage out. A computer is very good at calculating stuff. But if you give the computer the wrong numbers, it will instantaneously give you the wrong answer. But people don't understand that. They put something into the computer, it spits something out, and then they believe it. And you people do that all the time. You type something on the calculator, and then you have a number, and you'll say the number, and I'm always hearing numbers where I'm just like, that's wrong. And you know it's wrong, because it's not even close. You're off by like 2 decimal places or something. You hit divide instead of multiply, or you do, I mean, see, I can spot those things when they happen. A lot of you can't. Well, the calculator said so. The computer said so. And then you just go on with that garbage number. We got computers. And this is important because computers gave economists the ability to start measuring things. And the first thing that we really measured was something known as the Phillips curve. The Phillips curve is an empirical relationship. This is inflation. This is output. Okay. Here, you have an inflation rate of 0. Here you have positive inflation. Here you have negative inflation, i.e. deflation. And if inflation goes up, you get to here. If it goes down, you get a relationship like this. These are all different points. And then using statistical software, you get a fitted line to it, like so. And this is called the Phillips curve. And this was the first major empirical piece of econometric work done on a computer. It came out in 1959, I think. And this is beautiful. This is not my dissertation. My dissertation was this. That's about what, this was Alaska. This is about what my dissertation looked like. I took out Alaska, and then I could get a curve, but it's not a beautiful one. It didn't explain a whole lot. It did its job, so it was perfect, It's perfect in that it's done and I don't have to do it again. But it wasn't like this. Everyone looked at mine and said, okay, that's kind of interesting. It tells us a little bit. Everyone looked at this and said, wow, what a great relationship. But this means something. This means there is a lot of correlation between inflation and output. And we know where inflation comes from. MV equals PT. If we increase the money supply, prices will go up. When prices go up, it's inflation and output goes up. In other words, while maybe nominal wages are sticky downwards, they're not sticky upwards. And we can control the inflation rate because this is not just a line. These are actually numbers now. Not only do we know this, but we know how much. 3% inflation equals 1% decline in unemployment. He did it originally for output, but we quickly established what the relationship between output and unemployment is. I.e., a 3% increase in a certain percent increase in output will lead to a certain percent increase in employment. So 3% inflation, unemployment goes down 1%. What can we now do? We can now steer the economy. And in 1963, the economy went into a recession. And the Federal Reserve manipulated the money supply, and the recession ended very quickly. It ended quickly, and it was shallow. And the same thing happened again in 1967 or 68. And by this time, economists were doing all kinds of other econometric studies. The 1960s were the great era of statistics. This is when we could finally quantify that cigarettes killed people. We already knew they killed people, but we didn't know how much. Now you can look at smoking. You can compare it to death rates for various things. And you can now quantify all those things. This is when they started putting warning stickers on cigarettes. Because now, even though everyone knew it before, now it's science. And what did economists get as a reward? We got something, but we already had some amount of fame. We got something more tangible. They were already starting to listen to us, or pretending to listen to us. I don't believe politicians listen to us very much. I think politicians hire us to be their high priests. I do. I believe economists are the high priests of society today. We fulfill that same role. But did politicians listen to high priests? No, not really. They use high priests to justify what they wanted to do anyway. And if the priest told them otherwise, there's always another priest that we can bring in who will tell them what they want. And I really think economists kind of fulfill that role today. We're the high priest. Politicians can point to all of this and say, you see, this is why we have to do what I want to do. And I don't think the politicians understand most of this. I don't think they care. I mean, I don't. My wife and I had this argument this morning. I had to drop her off at Parliament because you're about to get a land tax. And my wife came home last night. She's all angry. So I said, what? It's like, they're going to put on the goddamn bill tomorrow. They went through 95 different clauses, and it took them 3 hours, and they didn't even listen to most of them. And there's like 50 lobbyists for rich people. And I'm just like, and this surprises you, why? And she's like, she's all mad. I mean, she's put 2 years of work into it. And I'm just like, you did go to George Mason with me. You did study under James Buchanan. Did you not foresee that this was going to happen? Of course 50 lobbyists show up on the last day. And of course you have to go in early because whatever you finished with last night It's going to be different when you get there in the morning. I promise you. I need to call her up and say, I told you so about that. Yeah, I really don't think politicians listen to us all that much. You may get a model of that, depending on if I cover public choice economics or not. Okay. No, what we got was a Nobel Prize. You do know our prize is different than everyone else's, right? Okay. Why did Alfred Nobel create the Nobel Prizes? He wanted a legacy other than the Merchant of Death. Alfred Nobel invented dynamite. And Alfred Nobel believed dynamite is so terrible, we'll never use it in war because it's too terrible, and thus war will become obsolete. Alfred Nobel was really, really wrong. And he felt bad about it, so he created 5 prizes. And what were the 5 prizes? The Peace Prize, which could also be named the Alfred Nobel I Feel Guilty Prize. The prize in physics, because that's going to the greatest geniuses of the age. Remember, when he's creating this is, when they're really discovering stuff. Einstein, Niels Bohr, Tesla, Heidegger. I mean, these were, the physicists at the time really were making tremendous discoveries. So, medicine, which is kind of the prize in biology. Chemistry, which was a really big thing at the time, it's kind of become a lesser prize. Oh, and then literature, which is also doubles as the philosophy prize. Or the Bob Dylan prize. Because Bob Dylan, big impact. I really don't think it's literature. But whatever. But you know what he didn't do? He didn't create a prize in the social sciences. And the social sciences were still quite young then. But by throughout the 50s and 60s, there was a consensus that Nobel had missed one. He should have created a prize in the social sciences as well. And the prize should go to economics, because economics is the hardest of the social sciences. I mean hard in the sense of the most like physics, i.e. mathematical, and with computers, quantifiable. And because we had Keynesian economics now, and because we're using it to steer the economy, economists are the high priests of the economy. Although the consensus then was that that was a good thing. So they decided we're going to create a new Nobel Prize. And it's actually called the Alfred Nobel Memorial Prize in economics. Instead of the Alfred Nobel Prize, it's the Alfred Nobel Memorial, because it's in memory of Alfred Nobel. So we got the prize in 1967, and we got it for Keynesian economics and econometrics. Those were really the 2 things. And I'm talking about the Phillips group, but we were doing all kinds of other things as well, using econometrics, to start quantifying things, to allow government agencies to operate better, to actually target things, to not just sort of guess, but to actually use information and do these kinds of things. So that's what we got in the 1960s. Yay, economists. If they had waited 10 years, we would not have gotten the prize. We would not have gotten the prize because almost everything I have taught you about this is either incomplete or wrong. It's either incomplete or wrong. Aren't you glad you spent time learning this? If I'm now telling you it's wrong? It's not wrong, but it's incomplete. We did not understand what we were doing. By the 1970s, this had turned into this. This relationship completely broke down. According to this model, if output goes down, prices go down. In the 1970s, prices were going up, and output was going down. Stagflation. The Keynesian model does not allow for stagflation. But the 1970s, there was clearly a lot of stagflation. And it was at that point that all of this had to be revisited. I don't want to say it's all wrong. But there's parts of it that we didn't understand. So I'm going to end early today. I don't want to start this. When we come back, we're going to not do Keynes. We're going to do Milton Friedman. For Milton Friedman, and I'm going to be using these same models, but I'm going to add additional assumptions about them that will make them look different, that will make them work different. So, but this is a good place to stop.